That's all right. Hi Samantha, come in.
Hello Kim, how are you today?
Take a seat. How have you been? How's
Warm
your day
outside.
Oh, has been.
This
hasn't it?
heat is really
Too warm. And I don't think the air conditioning works too well, does it?
Oh, it's not as good as it should be, I suppose.
It's lucky that you're out normally in the client's home instead of in this office.
Yes.
It's probably quite warm
I
in
can
here.
imagine how hot it is in this office all the time.
Yeah, no, that's well. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
And I understand you've just rescheduled your day a little bit to be here, so I'll try not to take up as much of your time. But and I know we discussed it over the phone what's actually happened with Mrs. Williams and her visit. So at first, what I would like to do, I'm just going to leave some notes if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
That's going to be all confidential. It's just part of as you know, it's part of our service.
Yes,
Be able to meet here today. So, and as you know, the whole reason for meeting here today is just discussing something that has occurred at Mrs. Williams' house last week. And it's just to find out how we can work through it and what other strategies we can actually do to be able to prevent things like that happening again. As you know, it's a little bit of a duty of care issue, so I'll discuss all about what's actually happened, but the whole purpose for today is just so we can have a little bit of a talk about it, and then at the end we'll have some plans, some ways that we can monitor it through. Okay, that's really basically the reason why we're here today. So have you got any questions before we get started?
No, that's fine, Kim.
That's
no,
okay?
That's fine.
Wonderful. So, as you know, and I know you've been with the organisation for almost 4 months now. So
Wow. It's gone quick,
fast.
yes.
Yeah, and you're doing a wonderful job, so we're very happy with what you're doing in your job performance. There's just one thing that possibly that we can talk about that can be modified a little bit today. And I do know that this happened, as I said, last week. And would you be able to explain a little bit what happened? You went to Mrs. Williams for your normal house duty work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I went, and as I was walking up the front steps, because I parked at the front, and I walked up the front steps, and I thought, oh, my goodness, that plant's grown a little bit.
Okay.
It's really in the way. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll help them out. I'll just, they've got a little thing there where they keep all their working gear and stuff. So I just used the shears and I just trimmed it back for them a little bit.
Okay. Right.
So that if people came, they could get to the door, and I thought, well, that saves them doing it,
Okay.
saves her doing it.
Right. Yes. It's difficult, isn't it? Because some of these things that we think that we can do and
To help
out. And I know we've discussed this within the training when you first started, because professional boundaries are hard, because our heart is there and we just want to help. But there is procedures that would need to happen before you do something like that in the future.
Yeah.
So, and I know that we talked a little bit about when you first began with us, that we talked about our risk assessments, and we talked about our work health and safety policies, and I know that you've got the policies and procedures that we've looked at. And I think it's just sometimes that quick decisions that we make, and we think that it's okay and it's going to be okay, but sometimes something might happen. It could have been a tree or plant that is poisonous.
Yes, no,
Okay,
I understand that now.
It could have been something that you could have hurt yourself in some way with the actual, garden equipment or something. So it's a way of looking at that and understanding that we do have the legal requirements and that we need to abide for duty of care, and that's to you and also to Mrs. Williams. Okay, and I think that didn't obstruct anybody from probably entering the house completely. It's possibly something that we could work out with Mrs. Williams about getting her gardener next time they're in to maybe trim it back. And I know we've talked about this over the phone, but just thought we'd talk about it today and see how we can work through it and what we can do to actually see how we go from there. So I know you understand it is illegal.
Yeah, I do understand. Yeah, it's just, it just seemed to me that at the time, I just felt, oh yes, I'm helping. I just wanted to do it for her because I thought, oh, she mightn't be able to do it. But now, there is, I know.
You can see the difference.
I can see.
It's just a possibility that something can occur. We need to look at those risks, and as you've been through that training, if we look at something, we need to foresee something that could be really dangerous. So something like possibly You could have done a little bit of trimming, and then next time you go, you might do a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and the boundaries can also go away. But also, you might grab a chair to cut a little bit off, not thinking of anything that can happen, and you might fall. See, the first time you do it, and it's because it's been successful and that you haven't hurt yourself, or there hasn't been a poisonous tree, you might want to do it again. So it's just important to be able to acknowledge that that's not how we do the service, and it's about the next step, and how can I now do the service, and if there's anything like that, it's reporting back to me to say, this is what's happened today, this is William's visit. I saw that this has happened with the tree, and I'd like to document that that could be a risk. Okay. And so then we would go out and see what we can do about it, and that would be possibly getting the gardener to cut it, or another type of activity that we could do by Mrs. Williams to get that covered.
It's funny, isn't it? You know, when I do the cleaning and I need to reach high, I make sure that it's a ladder that's safe and all that sort of thing.
Good, yes.
But just that one little thing,
it's amazing, isn't it?
Just trimming that bush, and then I thought, well, maybe I didn't think before. And that's the thing, as you say, it's thinking.
It's difficult. So because we've got the heart, we just want to go in and help, and it is difficult. But there is reasons why the legalities are there, and the policies are there, and I know back in another workplace I worked at, somebody did very similar, but it was a little bit of a bigger bush. But they did become ill because they were poisoned. It was a poisonous tree, but she wasn't aware of that. That was just a volunteer of an organisation. So, and the stress and the amount of medical costs and all that happened to that lady. So we want to protect you.
Yes, no, I
and that's my role, is to protect, of course, Mrs. Williams too. But my role is to also protect everyone's part of this service. I don't want you to get injured or hurt. And we need to just be able to think about that prior. And
it's not also good for the service.
No, well, that's something that's we this type of thing is just it happens, as I said before. It's just a general heart-built thing. So with your duty of care, and you've got a duty of care to Mrs. Williams too. Mrs. Williams might have been coming out of the house at the same time you're cutting it down, or something might have happened, and I know it could maybe never happen, but it's foreseeable, might happen. So your duty of care is really just to make sure, as you know, that there's no risks there that possibly something could happen. So it's just preventing something. So where you possibly thought by trimming that was a good thing, it wasn't possibly something that was on your mind at the time, you know, of not looking after yourself and your own duty of care, but also Mrs. Williams.
Yes, so, no, I understand that now. Yes.
So how can we work with you to be able to have something different in the future?
Well, maybe it's sort of on my side of it, it's me stopping to think too. Like, is that a sensible thing to do? Or and maybe it's the talking to the person, like as you say, talking to Mrs. Williams, and I have to understand that that's the best way to go.
But it is difficult because it can be such a spur of the moment. But do you think your training when you first started with us was sufficient enough to be able to, or do you feel that we could have explained a little bit more to be able to help you with this?
Well, maybe a sort of an ongoing training thing, like say every 6 months, to just
the boundaries,
go over the boundaries and what we need to be careful of, and the duty of care, and that maybe just every now and again have a little morning tea or something where we just go over it all together.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Because I mean, I did this, but there's possibly other workers that might
I think it's
get help from it too.
It's always good to learn something, isn't it? Try to get some different ideas.
Yes.
One thing I thought from a management perspective is maybe give some examples and maybe do some role plays and case studies while we're there in training.
Yes.
So maybe I could, not use that example as such, but use a generic example where somebody goes in and they trim something or something like that. And it's not part of their job role, because as you know, you get your activity list and what you need to do with Mrs. Williams that day, and that's not part of your role. So things that we possibly could do also is give those examples, and this could happen. Lots of consequence that can happen from something, so that's particularly with duty of care. But again, if something was to happen, the organisation has failed as our legal requirement within your safety and the duty of care. Even if something was to happen when some part of it fell and hurt Mrs. Williams coming out.
Mhm.
There's all these things that possibly, as I said before, won't happen, but we need to look at it as foreseeable. So these things, and when you go there, automatically think, okay, if I do that, what could happen? That's a risk. That's a risk assessment. So maybe we could actually do that in some training and
Yeah, that's a
recap
good
some of
idea.
that. And I thought maybe the plans, maybe when we look at the activity plans, maybe identifying what not to sort of do or what to look for, and what if I see something that isn't what I think is right or something like that, how can I report that?
Mhm.
And I know we've got forms for the risks when you have a hazard,
Mhm.
but do you think the forms work okay or
Well,
more?
it's just whether or not something could happen before the forms are even sort of worked out.
Right.
Like,
yes.
you know, sometimes maybe, and if you put down enough on the forms for you to understand
Yes, true. That's right.
what really happened, because sometimes when people are writing something, an incident, there might be things that they leave out, or they might just write it really quickly.
That's something we can definitely look into.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. No,
That's
good.
okay.
I'll put that down. Okay, and also what I was thinking was a little bit of involvement maybe from Mrs. Williams. You know, if there's different ways that Mrs. Williams might be able to have possibly the door open or something like that. Different ways we can do.
Maybe.
So then possibly you didn't see that plant or anything, but we can definitely, if you'd like to see how we go with the training and the planning and the forms and the different ways that we can look at that risk assessment, and if you could do something in between now and we'll meet in 2 weeks, it's just to have a look at the policies and procedures again, really, just to have a look at those legalities we have and why we have them, and different things we can get back and do a bit of revision in a few weeks. Would that be okay?
That'd be fine. That's
Okay.
a really good idea, and thank you for that. I really appreciate you discussing it with me. And
Not a problem.